Guys, you should always read the newspapers and get these good pieces of information and read them. It doesn't have to be an environmental story. Just simply look through and appreciate a good story. Once you see a good story, then it means you can also write a good story. And probably, those people who have written that kind of story, a bit pedestrian like me, you can even write better than them. You have these huge resources. When we began writing, the internet was not there. Plenty of information. We didn't have phones. We didn't have computers where you can probably rewrite your intro 5 times or even 10 times. You would write on a typewriter. Once your copy is not good enough, the editor will just simply destroy everything because there's no option. The paper has to run the next day. By 5, the guys must have their stories. So if you've been working on a typewriter and you've made mistakes somewhere because they're going to lift this thing, measure some centimeters and paste it somewhere, so they don't have that time. That story is what? It's gone. You have huge resources and a huge potential. How I wish I was born today and not yesterday. This is the best possible time even to write these stories, great stories. You can use multimedia. Issues like there's no space in the paper, blah, blah. That's now a thing of the past. The internet is so huge. You can use dicto methods. You can have your own blog. You can have your own TV. You can have your own podcasts online. So nobody can just simply stop you. Those barriers, they have collapsed. The power is in what? Yeah, in your hands. I'll start by answering an interesting question about how business can benefit from good communication about how they can improve. What is it in there that we can show them that they can benefit by conserving the environment? In any crisis, there's always a silver lining. There are huge opportunities the other side. When I went to the newsroom, I'd finished my first degree at Makerere. I did forestry for my first degree. I studied journalism later. And guys used to say, you write badly, these are bad reports. They would shelve them. And the entry point in a newsroom is that you start as a freelancer. So if you have no story, the editor is saying this is bad, this is bad, this is bad. That week goes, another week, a month. You will have nothing to carry home. How are you going to pay your bills? Now, from that bad situation, from that crisis of sorts, you can imagine a young man and at the end of the month you have no money to carry home. What do? You pick up the tools of the trade and learn how to write. And that is your skill. You live with it. It's the human capital, the personal capital you have. And this is the process, the journey you are going to take on today. In the beginning, things may not be so rosy. Even when you know how to construct sentences and those essays to pass exams, that is for that level. The kind of writing in a newsroom is slightly different. You have to write interesting stuff. I had the presentations here. You must be appealing to your audience. You must speak to the heart of those people who will be reading your stuff. You know, the environment is, to some extent, a boring subject. So you have to speak to the heart of the people who will be watching your stuff or reading your stuff. They must visualize this story. You've used words, but they must see the images, the imagery. You must use chatty style. Be interesting. So out of every crisis, there's an opportunity. We are phasing out diesel cars, those carbon-emitting cars, and moving into cars that not emit those gases. And there are huge opportunities. We have an energy crisis in this country. 96% of the population depends on charcoal and firewood. The guys who are going to make energy conservation stoves or better technologies, there are huge opportunities waiting for them. See? In business, I've listed here a number of examples. And I was saying that, look, that biogas thing plant by National Water, which does not produce good gas because probably those raw materials are a bit poor. Many years ago, National Water was polluting Lake Victoria because they were receiving all this stuff at their plant in Bugolobi. But then they did not have capacity to treat it well. So they would semi-treat it, send to Lake Victoria. But the same company that is sending most of this stuff there is also extracting raw water for treatment to pump back to Kampala. So you see, quite an irony. On one side you are polluting, the other side you are spending money to pump water to bring back to Kampala. And the situation has been declining over the years in terms of the pollution of Lake Victoria. At one time they were paying twice the amount of money they were paying probably 50 years ago to treat water at Gaba. At some point it tripled. Right now they pay 8 times the cost of treating water compared to that of 1950. So what did they do? Put in place a plant that can trap most of this sewage, treat it nicely, tap the biogas, and your plant will not pay electricity costs anymore to Meme. You are turning a problem into an opportunity, and you're going to save money. But all of this can happen in a regulated environment. Because if you have many people missing the point and abusing the environment, and nothing happens to them, you'll continue being wasteful. I'll give you another example. In Mbarara, there's Coca-Cola and Nile breweries. They planned years ago that, you see, Mbarara is going to become a city. So they decided to move away from Kampala because it's a cost. Manufacturing all these drinks and then supplying them to Mbarara, that emerging market, then Eastern Congo, Rwanda, and Northern Tanzania. So they moved closer to the market to cut costs. But as we speak, most of these companies are producing at less than 30% capacity. 30% less capacity means if the installed capacity was to make 100 crates of beer in a day, they can only make 30 crates. Not because they don't want, but water in River Rizi is not enough. So you have more water in River Rizi, your capacity is what? Going to expand. So what do you do? Right now, Coca-Cola and Nile breweries are contributing to the catchment management of River Rizi, wherever it comes from in Buweju. It crosses about 10 districts before it goes to Lake Victoria. So you invest in a restoration of wetlands, tree planting, blah, blah, the yield of water which you are tapping to make your goods increases. So you benefit directly. Because remember, you're employing all these guys, the installed capacity is 100 crates, but you can only produce 30. But once you invest in the catchment, there's more water. You're going to employ more people, make more money, more profits. And everybody is going to go away home smiling. There are cement factories in this country, like Kima in Kasese, and then Tororo Cement Factory. They used to emit a lot of stuff. You'd pass around Hima near Kasese, and you'd not even see the sky. Everything would be up there. In smoke, there would be a huge cloud. The same thing in Tororo. And cement is a poisonous thing. It affects people, and especially old people like me and the young ones. Now, what happens that NEMA kept on pushing these guys, and they were not complying. Then at some point they said, okay, we can sit down with you on one table. You can actually benefit by putting in place these measures. The technology that can improve and stop this waste from coming out and polluting the environment is quite expensive. But over a period of time, you are going to save money. So they said, okay, we are giving you 5 years to improve on this problem. And these guys were able to install an electronic precipitator. And as we speak now, there's no more pollution in Kasese. No more pollution in Tororo. And what has happened? These guys are capturing a lot more cement that used to escape into the environment, and they are making more money from it. There are companies that have done environmental audits in this city, and even Ginger. Even homes and offices. They realize that if they probably installed in certain gadgets, they can save a lot more water and power. Just imagine when you go to flush the other side of the room. A small piece of pool like this consumes 20 liters of water. What if there's technology that can cut that to about a quarter, that amount? And it's there. You cut like from 20 liters to just 5 liters. So every time somebody flushes, you're saving 15 liters of water. 15 liters of water. At the end of the day, you save a huge amount of water, and your bill for water will go down. Electricity. At one time, we were using those small bulbs. In my home, we decided to put energy savers at some point. We cut the power bill to less than half. Those are direct benefits which you can talk about in your stories. The benefits are huge, and they are there. But at the end of the day, we should have a properly regulated environment where the wrong guys will be punished. The guys who are doing a good thing, there should be incentives to pat them on the back and say, well done. In developed economies, this is done. And where companies are doing very well, there will be tax exemptions for some period of time or tax reductions. But here, the environment is free for all. People are doing whatever they can in there in the name of saving money. There are companies I know in this country that will use charcoal and firewood because electricity is expensive. And what are they doing? Accelerating deforestation. The very trees and forests that help us to create rain, they are chopping them down. When you are writing a story, in many times, you've covered an event, you've been in the field, you've gone back to the news editor. The first thing they will ask you, what is the story? You are not going to run away from this. All the time, you need to ask yourself, what is the story? You've been covering a press conference or a launch of tree planting, whatever. Always ask yourself, what is the story? You fail to answer that question, you have no business with that story. In many cases, people start writing even when they don't understand the story. Those are the stories that you'll find that they'll never run. They'll not be appealing to anybody. They'll rest there because you didn't answer that question very well. So there's what we call mind mapping in the newsroom, and it's basically just simply an outline like that. Always ask yourself, what is the story? In case you are not sure at the beginning what you are going to cover, there's what we call a hypothesis. It is something which you think is what you should write about, something that is going to direct your research. Not a clear storyline, but something which represents what you want to write about. Then there's what we call so what, the question of so what. You remember we said you must be appealing to the person, to the audience. You know, how am I affected? Climate change stories can be boring, yes. Link them to other sectors that matter to people. We've talked about business and the wastage of water or the saving of water. Connect them to health. Connect them to infrastructure. Connect them to security. For instance, if there's a huge flood somewhere on Ginger Road and cars cannot pass from one side to the other side, that is a security matter. If guys are doing sand mining in Rela and that whole place, the road collapses, Kampala-Masaka road collapses, you'll not have cars going to Western Congo, going to Rwanda, and Northern Tanzania. This one is very key. What is at stake? Who has interest in what you are writing about? It could be water. National water maybe is interested. It could be Lake Victoria. It could be fisheries. Identify the stakeholders. according to that stake. Now, from there, you'll be able to phrase very good questions out of this. If you know the storyline, you are not so sure, but you've answered, so what is at stake? You are there, who are the stakeholders? You have them. You go to your questions. Now, from there, start doing your research a little bit more. Cast your net wider. Read to get context. I heard people are talking about context here. This is where you'll get a good background to dress up the issues that you'll be highlighting in the story. You are not the first person to do all this. You heard when I was talking about Coca-Cola in Mbarara, Nile breweries. Find out, guys, the background, guys who have done some work about this. You'll get stories, review reports. Don't offload these reports, they can be huge, like 200 pages. Read them and summarize them, or get insights into what these reports are talking about. And this is what will help you to form part of your research and also sharpen your questions and create a productive time when you have the interviews. That was a brief of what we'll be talking about quickly. Of course, we've passed through a bit of that. Maybe here what we have to emphasize, climate change reporting or environmental reporting is about facts. You have the facts or don't have them. If you don't have them, don't even attempt to write that story. You're wasting your time. Facts, facts, facts. At all times, you must be able to sieve and get the facts. Environmental journalism is basically about two things. It's about interpretation, and it's also about investigation. We had, when you are presenting here, those 4 groups or 5, you are talking about breaking down the jargon. That's basically interpretation. You'll find so many words, biodiversity, you'll have precautionary principle, climate change resilience, cap this, cap that. You have to break down all of that stuff to the ordinary person. Don't offload them into your news story. When I was beginning to write, I was required even to define the word wetland. Yes. So you write about Nachivubo channel, but when you're writing down there in brackets, you put what it means. So over time, we educated people, so now you don't even have to define that. What is investigation? This means uncovering and searching to get details. This is what we are talking about here. Get details to build a good story. Get good materials that are going to help you an appealing story. Focus on that one individual. Do case studies and focus on one person. Build and bring in more people, 2 other people, 3 more people, a community, women, local leaders, government, and then the story will be complete. Yeah. There's also something which we tend to forget sometimes when we are writing. This environment we are talking about is about power, and it's about power relations. Yeah. We have a forest somewhere, like Mabira, or Bugoma, or we have a lake like Victoria, or a wetland like Nachivubo. This is what we normally often call the common property goods, areas that are free for anybody to go there and do whatever they want to do.